and then you'll have Katie giving her presentation for the evening. We have the Zoom live on. There will be a question and answer session at the ending of the presentation. For any personal matters, if you let us know, then we can possibly turn the Zoom off and engage with the intimacy of who's in the room. Alright? Okay, well let's get straight on because time is moving and we're a little bit late to start. So thank you all again for coming out. Please welcome our brother, dad, granddad, Mr. Downie. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Downie, and how this thing started, I served in the British Army for 6 years. I served in 2nd Battalion and Parachute Regiment. I've been in the war zone 3 times. God bless me, I've come home alive and, well, and healthy. But mentally, I'm a bit messed up. But basically what happened, I got in trouble about 20 years after coming out the army, and I just thought, okay, judge will give me what I call a slap on the wrist, either a fine or tell me go to prison for like 28 days and I'll go home. When it was time to leave Wormwood Scrub, I got to the door and I says, yeah, I'm going home now, bruv. He says, no, you're not. I said, why? You're not for release. Immigration hold you're on. And I was shocked. Immigration? Why? I've been here 34 years. I fight and serve for the Queen and country. Why would they want to see me? Next thing I know, they came and says, yeah, we're going to try to deport you. I says, what? I've got 8 children. At the time, I had 14 grandchildren. 8 children, 14 grandchildren. You come on the boat. Yes, we can. Then they made a mistake and give me immigration bail. I disappeared. I run hide, and I was telling my family, if anybody come looking for me, don't answer the door, find out who they are first, because immigration is after me. One thing led to another. I hate police officers being rude and cheeky with me for the color of my skin. And a policeman came and I thumped him down because I says, yo, I fight war for Queen and country. Why don't you go join the anti-terrorists and hunt them down instead of picking on black people? Next thing I know, judge told me, yeah, we will make sure them deport you this time. This is now 2009. I'm in a place called the Citadel in Dover. Michael Jackson is going to die on the Thursday. And that Thursday morning, before the news came that Michael Jackson died, they came and said, we want you to sign this paper so we can give you £500 so when you go to Jamaica you can open up business. And I think, what? 500 for And they said, yes, we got your flight booked for Monday. You're on a plane out of here. Well, when they tell me that, I ain't gonna lie, tears was running out my eyes, and I went straight in the church, and I laid down. I'll never forget this. I laid down upon my belly in the church till the time come when the prison guard them have to come and say time to go back in cell. I said, I'm not leaving the house, and they'll take me by force. But every time, Friday morning, they let me out again. I'm back in the church, and I'm crying, I'm praying, I'm begging God to help me. And I made a promise to him, get me out of here. And I don't know how, but I know you will tell me what to do to help my people. Because I know I wasn't the only one in there. I seen a whole heap of Africans and Jamaican in the deportation center, and some of them shouldn't have been there just like me. Right. The Monday morning they called me to the thing, so I got like tears running up, boy, I'm gone in on my picnic. By this time I've already informed my daughter Katie that, oh, your daddy gone, you know, they must send him to Jamaica and all of that. And I hear the man says, Downie, go and pack your bags, you're going home. So me start crying. Someone said, no, not Jamaica, we're releasing you. The army people find your paper. You exempt from deportation. Exempt mean that what I went through I should never gone through. That's 2009. 2018, my daughter Katie came to me because she's been in university, got degree and master degree. They're good at researching. And says, Dad, do you know that these people owe you money, compensation? I says, oh, don't leave me alone, man. Don't talk about compensation. What are you talking about? Then she says, no, look, it's called Windrush Compensation. Just try and fill it out, Dad, and tell them and see what happens. I did what she said, and sometimes it's a good thing to obey people, whether them young or old, but obey them, because you never know when God talking to them and telling you. And I fill it out, and I found out I'm overqualified. They owe me a lot of money. Not just me alone. My children, down to my grandchildren. Do you hear what I'm telling you? And then, when my daughter and I start programming this thing, they try to make out that, have you been in immigration or had immigration problem? But she will tell you in her thing, even if them only for half an hour, you have immigration problem. And immigration all, that's work out, but that's for her to tell you, and I won't go into her side of it, but I'll tell you about my side now, like I'm telling you. I told you I was in the army, but what I didn't tell you, I got a son that was born in Berlin Military Hospital in Berlin. Now, anytime you, as an army, you got occupied territory, everything on the occupied land belongs to the Crown of England. So my son was born property of the Crown, just like many of you elders in here from the Caribbean, before your country got independent, you were born property of the Crown of England. Yes? Right. My daughter will tell you about that a little bit. But what I'm telling you, after releasing me, 6 months after releasing me, they came to try to deport my son. What? Them try to deport me. It's like, you can't deport me. You're coming to offer my son. So I take that personal now. And it's like you're waging a war on my family. Wrong thing they try to do, because she ain't standing for it. Katie now stand for it. Believe. And that's why she's organized. This thing we do here, we do it all over the country. And today is our 1 year anniversary. And we've been almost the length and breadth. Scotland and Wales, we ain't been in yet. The length and breadth of this country, telling you how to fill out the form, because the white people, I'm not racist, but they program it, that if you look at it, you would know where to start. So you need to listen what my daughter is going to tell you. And they found out my son was exempt from deportation. They just paid him a lot of money. They paid 5 of my 8 children a whole heap of money. Now, we don't charge nobody. We come and we tell you for free, by the grace of God, how to fill out the application form and get yours too. Even if you're born here, my daughter born here, they give her over 20 grand. Another one of my child got over 30 grand. They born here. You see, because once you as a primary claimant, which I was, and you accepted as a primary claimant, it opens the door. Even some of you who parents had lived here and got you here before are now dead, you have the deceased application. You can make it out on behalf of your dead parents and split it up between the family. And once that happens, it opens up the door again where that dead person, children and grandchildren are qualified for this. So you really need to hear what my daughter is going to tell you when she comes back in. And the other thing that I was trying to explain to you is this. They set it up in such a way that when you look at it, you will not know where to start. They monitor every program that me and my daughter do. Yes. And I've been really scrutinizing the all. I can't see any what I call infiltrators from the Home Office in here. So I think we're really cool in here. Thank you, pastors and elders of the church. I thank you. This is the cleanest meeting I've been to from we trying. So my daughter Katie, will you come and enlighten the people how to fill up the application form?
Thank you, Dad. Greetings, everybody. I want to say thank you all for coming to our event today. Sorry that the time changed, but that was due to unforeseen circumstances. I want to say thank you to the church and to Clarence for helping us get the building. It's been quite hard getting buildings because we're not funded. So, we've got to ask the community to donate buildings to us. And unfortunately, a lot of people who do have community buildings or spaces are trying to charge us like £300 for 2 hours, and it's ridiculous because this is free information that we're trying to deliver for free for our people, to free our people. So, so we give thanks for the use of the building. We're going to have my presentation up on the screen, and there is quite a lot of information, so do take notes. Do feel free to record on your mobile phones if you wish to. Towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to put our business cards out. Feel free to take one. We have a social media app. It's black-owned, made by a beautiful couple, Simone and Tony. And it's called the COCA app, COCAA. But don't worry, I'm going to put it on the screen at the end and give out the cards as well. It's a free social media app that's conscious. You won't find anything negative on there. And I've got the full presentation on there, and I've got other presentations as well, like how to legally request evidence and things to write in your form, because a lot of us know that we're eligible, but some of us will think, well, which part do I put down and how do I evidence it? So, as Empress Anua said, we do have Zoom on, which is recording. We will give you an opportunity to ask questions, but if there's anything personal that you don't wish to discuss on record, let me know and we can take the volume off. So, 1 second. So the Windrush Compensation Scheme. So as Empress Anua said, I made this presentation over a year ago. I had the idea to let the community know because as I helped my father and I asked more elders in the community, I realised nobody knew about it. My father was one of the first to apply back in 2018. So, I realised I couldn't help people individually, so this is how we've decided to do it. So in the presentation, we'll discuss the eligibility criteria, how to collect your evidence, because many people worry about evidencing what they've been through because it's been so long ago, and then how to understand the application process and what to expect once you apply. Once you've sent it off. So, introduction. For those at the back, please don't worry too much that you can't see the writing if it's too small. As I said, you can access this on our website, COCA. So, introduction. In this presentation, we focus on the Windrush Compensation Scheme, and we discuss the reason why the compensation is being awarded, the eligibility criteria, how to apply, what evidence is required, and how to source this, the actual process of applying, and then how to appeal if they've gave you a decision that you're unhappy with and that you do not agree with. Also, what I add to my presentation, which makes it unique to any other Windrush event that are out there, is intergenerational trauma, which we all have experienced, and that also explains, well, how are your grandchildren eligible, for example. The intergenerational trauma, and then psychological disorders such as maternal deprivation, which psychologists acknowledge is caused due to the separation of a child and its mother in early childhood, which many people would have experienced being left back at home. And then attachment disorder as well, which is based on the bonds between you and your mom, but you and the rest of your family as well, which, many of us do have due to the Windrush scandal. And it goes down into our generations. It's not just the people who affected. And we do touch on a lot of sensitive topics, so I apologise in advance if it does happen to cause upset to anybody, but I'm speaking about it just to remind you what to kind of put on the form and how to evidence it. So, who is eligible? Well, there's many nations that are eligible, and it's all of the Caribbean nations. Don't worry if you can't see your nation on there, but all of the Caribbean islands and several African nations as well. There's also some non-black countries on there, but as you can see, there's many nations. There's Sierra Leone, South Africa, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Nigeria. So if you do have friends or family from the African community, please do also let them know. The Home Office don't want us to get this money. They're not giving our African brothers and sisters it, and they're not wanting to give us it as well. We suspect, myself and some politicians from our community and some legal representatives, and community activists, we suspect that the Home Office have misspent our money. £500 million was given for the Windrush Compensation scandal to compensate our community. And what the government didn't do was advertise it properly. That's why 4 or 5 years later, we're only finding out about the scheme properly now. So they haven't advertised it properly, and then people who have applied, they're being told no or being given low amounts of money. So I must say that if you do get a response where they say, you know, well, we can see that you're eligible, but I can't see how you've suffered due to the scandal, because that's what they're saying to a lot of people. If they do say that, challenge it. If they do say that, make sure you message me on the app, on the COCA app, so that I can give you guidance. And also, I do have some contacts of legal representatives from our community who are also able to represent people who have complex cases. And there are some people who charge, but I've also got a couple of people doing it pro bono. But honestly, I think if you're fine with filling forms in, and if you can process this information, what I shared today, you should be able to complete it yourself. But those who do have complex cases or need support, please reach out to us, because it's very important that as many people apply as possible. So, who is eligible? So, there's 3 different application forms and 3 separate criteria for the form, which I'll go to explain now. But the main criteria is, if you entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973 from a British Commonwealth nation, then you qualify to apply. Yeah? So if you come here from a British Commonwealth nation before the 1st of January 1973, which is the majority of people from our community or our elder relatives. Also, if you've had losses because you could not prove your right to stay, well, what does that mean? It simply means that if you've ever been challenged due to not being able to prove that you're British, or being told that you're not British despite of having a British Caribbean passport, and you've been turned away from services due to that, then you can apply. So things like, if you've ever been employed and they've told you that you're not British, so they have to terminate your employment, you can apply for that. If you've had any issues travelling or getting travel documents such as passports, British passport, or using your own passport to travel around and you've been stopped, as my father said, even for 30 minutes, for example, in an airport, if someone said to you, sorry, can you stand aside, we have to run some checks on your passport to make sure that you are British, even if they've held you for 30 minutes in an airport, that's classed as being detained under immigration, so you can claim for that as well. And then there's non-financial losses such as psychological impact of having the broken bonds in your family. So if you got left back at home by your parents, or if you travelled with your parents but had to leave other family members back at home, and dealing with the separation and loss of that family member, and also dealing with feelings of abandonment as well, or if you were the child that got brought here with your parents, Are you blamed by your family that did get left back at home? You know, because these things are real and it has affected our family on a large scale. Those are the type of things that you can claim for. Now, if your parent or grandparent come before the 1st of January 1973, you will apply as a close family member. So if you're the child, sibling, or even parent or partner of someone who arrived here before the 1st of January 1973, or their child, you can also claim. Can we take questions towards the end of the presentation, please? Yeah? It's about 45 minutes. Yeah? Do you need a pen and paper so you can write them down? Because I want everyone to be able to have an opportunity to ask the questions. But if we do it throughout the presentation, it kind of loses track, and it's on Zoom as well, so that's why. Yeah? Yeah, you can apply if you're the child, brother, sister, parent of someone who can't prove their right to stay in the UK or who has had any of the experiences that we've spoken about. You don't have to face deportation in order to be eligible. You solely have to prove that you've suffered in one way or another due to being a British subject or born British property of the Crown, but denied your rights to a British life. For example, many of our people come over here before 1973 and applied for social housing and were denied social housing, or their application was just ignored. So before, when you were back at home, they were promising you a better life, better accommodation, employment and so forth, and then when you arrived here, there was no job for you lined up, there was no housing for you or no housing service to receive you, and instead many people had to share tenement yards or one bedrooms with a whole family or more than 5 people in one room, and that's ridiculous. So they didn't stick to their promise, and which means they manipulated and exploited many of our people. That's why the compensation's been awarded. You can also apply if your family member arrived before the 1st of January 1973 but are no longer alive. So if your family member come then before 1973 and died, whether they passed away here or back home or in another country, they are still eligible. You are eligible to apply on their behalf so long as you have the death certificate and so long as you're the next of kin or the legal representative of the estate. There's separate application form for that, and it's called the representative of an estate application form. So they're the 3 different types of applications, basically. As I said, if you have any questions, please hold them to the end about any of those different application forms. If you apply as a close family member of someone who arrived before 1973, or as a representative of an estate, you have to evidence how you're related to them. So using your birth certificate or some other document, maybe evidence that you were their next of kin or they were your next of kin, or evidence from your school or GP that they were your parent. You need to evidence that you are related to them. You also then need to evidence, if you're applying as a close family member, someone who's born here or someone who arrived after 1973, you need to evidence how what you've been through has been a direct impact of what your family member has been through due to the scandal. If you arrived before 1973, you need to evidence how what you've been through is linked to the scandal. So I'll give you some examples further on in the presentation. If you're applying for a family member who's no longer alive, but you're not the representative of an estate or next of kin, then you need to get written permission from the person who is the representative of an estate or next of kin, just to say that you will do the application on their behalf. Now, with a family member who's no longer alive, only one person in the family can claim on their behalf, such as the legal representative or next of kin, or whoever's got permission. Only one person can do the representative of an estate application. But then you can all do a separate application for yourselves as the close family member. Yeah? Now, even if you're the person who's done the representative of an estate application, you can still do your own one. The representative of an estate application application is based on your family members suffering, not yours, but their suffering. And then when you write yours, you write a little bit about your family member, but then it's fully about you, basically, from the day that you started suffering until the current day. What have you been through mentally, financially, psychologically, in terms of your family, how you view yourself, things like that, and your quality of life as well. For those of us that are born here, we're mainly going to be focusing on the impact of life category, so how has it affected our lives. Now, there's two kinds of ways that these applications are assessed. On all of the three different applications, there's two main sections, which is immigration and deportation, and the second one is impact of life. Now, if you arrived before the 1st of January 1973, it's very likely that you've had at least one issue to do with immigration. Even the fact that you were born as a British subject or British property, and then when you come to the UK, they told you that you have to now pay and queue up to become British again, when you was already born British by law, you know. So you come back here, and now they're telling you, well, you need to naturalise, and we need you to do it by such and such date, and you need to pay for it as well. If you don't, then you're at risk of deportation. That's an immigration issue. That's when immigration has affected your life. Had you not been able to pay for it, what would have happened? Would you have been deported? As well, what you can claim for under immigration and deportation is if your family ever had any issues sending for you, because sometimes they would have applied to send for you more than once, and it may have been unsuccessful for whatever reason. Sometimes the Home Office didn't even give our family members a reason as to why they're not accepting you. They just ignored the application. And those applications cost money as well, you know. And bear in mind, it was very low pay. There was factory work and things like that. It took our family a long time to save up for those things. You can also actually apply if you got left at home and you never made it to the UK. So our family members that got left at home in our home nations and never made it, they can apply as well. And if our family members have tried to send for them and it was unsuccessful, they should note that on their application. So the other category, impact of life, it's about how has it affected our lives. How has it affected our quality of family life and our quality of life altogether, basically. Impact of life is the main category for people that are born here. People that are born here, like me, we probably won't qualify for immigration and deportation. Saying that, some people were born here and still had to go through the naturalisation process. So if you was born here and still had to be naturalised, then you need to put that on your application form as well, because that should have never have happened. And a number of people in our community received letters in 2000 or 2012 advising them that they are not British and they may have to go and sign on at the Home Office or whatever. And a lot of people were given the Home Office ID cards, the biometric residence permanency card. So if that happened to anyone, that shouldn't have happened, and that's something that you can put on your application. So the categories of award, that's the official title that you see on the application, categories of award. All that means is things you can claim under. So there's detention, deportation, removal, and returns. That's their word, and you will see that on the application form, on all of the application forms, despite of which one you're using. There's immigration fees and associated legal costs, so anything you've had to pay for those matters. Some people lived here, got a house here, went on holiday and got stuck there and couldn't come back because of the illegal processes. If that was you, that's where you would put that information under removal and returns. There's housing and homelessness. So as I said, many of us come here and didn't have anywhere to live. And then had to live up in cramp-up housing or housing that wasn't suitable. Or some people still haven't been given a permanent accommodation from the council. This is where the information goes, and if you've ever complained to the local council or whatever, use that as evidence for this information. If you've ever lived at family member's house because you couldn't get anywhere to live, this is where you would put that information, okay? Many of us have suffered, and you don't even realise until I go into the presentation. So health issues. The climate's different here. You weren't warned about the difference in climate. The lack of sun here causes us to have low vitamin D and low iron, causing us to have anemia and other iron deficiency related disorders. It can impact us. We can get SAD from the lack of the sun here, and that can cause us psychological issues and physical health issues as well, like osteoporosis and stuff. If you have any of those conditions, put it on the form, because you probably never had that before you come to this nation. And diet as well, the food here and the change of diet and how you would have struggled when you first come here. Those are things that you can claim for on the form as well. And do mention those things to give it more background. We have really suffered and we still are suffering. It's very, very, very important that you note everything. The more you put down on the form, the higher your claim is likely to be. You do need to provide evidence, and we're going to discuss that soon. But it's very important that you put everything down and you get as much as evidence as possible. Education. Now, some of you would have come here and started college and been asked to pay for education. Some people I speak to tell me they had to pay £5 a month for their education. That shouldn't have happened, because that happened because people were not being assessed as home students, as British students. People were being assessed as international students. That's wrong. You should have been assessed as a British student. So any fees that you've paid for education in this nation, on the basis that you weren't British, you can put all of that down. And if you've got evidence, they need to pay you for that, basically. And as I said, the impact on your normal daily life. Some people are not able to get over the trauma from childhood, and it affects their behaviour, it affects the way that they think. The broken relationships still affect family members today. Some of us have family members who we don't know or don't speak to, and we think, it's just because they're funny, or maybe because we're a bit funny. It's highly likely to be due to the fact of intergenerational trauma and what it's done to our family on a whole. So that's the main areas of what you can claim for. There's also a category on each of the application forms called the discretionary circumstances. So that's for cases where it's nothing that we've already discussed. So as I said, if you were born in Britain but you still had immigration issues, that's where you would put it. If there's things that you've gone through that are much worse than what we've discussed, that's where you would put it. Now, the government are awarding at least £10,000 per successful application. It's £10,000 per category. So if you qualify for both immigration and impact of life, the least you will get is £20,000. So it's very, very, very important to provide evidence. If you don't provide evidence and you just write, they're not able to compensate you. So please do get the evidence. The maximum amount you can get per usual claim, so if it fits into the criteria is what we've just discussed, it's up to £100,000 per person. My dad, he got over £50,000 for what he went through, but he was in a deportation centre and he was able to evidence that, yeah? If you have been in a deportation centre or even been detained for 30 minutes in an airport, you're probably going to get £30,000 and over. If you've been affected and you've been abandoned as a child and then you've come here and you've had psychological issues or you weren't able to come here, you're probably going to get about £20,000 or £30,000 and above as well, so long as you can evidence it. Yeah, so they are giving out some good amounts of money, although some of my friends who are legal representatives have said to me it's still not enough. So she's advised me, Jacqueline McKenzie, who's a civil rights lawyer who's been leading on the Windrush campaigns, she's advised me to ask you all, once you get your first offer, what you should do is decline it and wait until they give you a second offer. I accepted my offer, my first offer, because I couldn't believe it. you know, especially being born in England and I'm mixed race as well, I just thought, I'm not going to get anything. But when I started helping my dad through his form, I realised that your children can apply. So I applied and I provided a bit of evidence of adversity in my childhood, and they gave me £20,000. So because I thought I wasn't going to get anything, I just signed it straight away. And I was like, £20,000, okay. But now I actually, had I thought about it, I wish that I would have rejected it to see what they would have offered me. But that's the type of money that they're giving out. And although I do agree with the legal representatives, it's still not enough. £100,000, what they've put everyone through, it's still not enough, because the collateral damage through all of our generations, up until the young people running up and down doing youth violence on the streets, that they've come from our lineage, basically. So it's been very damaging, and they definitely owe us more than that. Now, with all of these categories, you may not have suffered in every single one of them. You just need to suffer in at least one. You need to meet the main criteria, such as arriving before the 1st of January 1973. Or your family member has to have arrived before then. And secondly, to meet at least one of those criteria. So issue with housing, the majority of us have that. I don't believe there's one person from our generations that haven't had at least one of those issues. Yeah. So even if they didn't have issues with housing, they probably would have been impacted on our family being separated. So as I said, the more evidence, the more they're going to pay you, basically. So in regard to evidence, many people say, "Oh, I can't get evidence. You know, it was so long ago." Actually, you can. I've got lots and lots of examples of how you can evidence it, and I'll read some out. But then please do log on to our app where you can find more of this information to help you in your individual case. So first and foremost, you have to provide evidence of who you are and evidence of who your family member is, if you're not the first generation that come from the Windrush era. So yes, your travel documents, whether it's your original travel document or if you've got a British travel document, you can use that as evidence of who you are. If you don't have any photographic ID, then you need to provide a letter from a legal letter, a letter from the Home Office, a solicitor, or from a bank to prove your address. Letters from DWP benefits can be used as well. Any official letter, basically, you will need 2 of those. And if you've got any letters from any medical letters or anything with your NHS number on and things like that, you can use that as well, or a council tax bill. So to evidence yourself, you need to prove who you are and then where you live. And if you're a close family member or applying for representative of an estate, you need to prove how you're related to the person who come before the 1st of January 1973. And then in order to evidence what you've been through, you would need to start to do some research, basically. Sorry, the flicker's not working. You would need to... Yes, you would need to evidence what you've been through. Now, many people think, how can I do that? Well, there's many ways to evidence what you've been through, such as requesting evidence from medical practitioners, so from the NHS or from the GP, any counselling records, any evidence of therapy, any evidence of mental health or psychological diagnosis. So if they've said you've got attachment disorder, if they've said you've got anxiety and depression, even if you had something 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even if it's just stress, that is going to help you evidence that you've been through adversity, that you've been through challenging times. That's what you need evidence of. And if you've ever used any support services, so if you've ever had to use a support worker, social services, home help, any type of support, in any areas of your life, then you can use that as evidence that you were struggling, because if you weren't struggling, you wouldn't be using support services. If you've ever claimed DWP benefits, the reason why that's important is in this nation they say that benefits are to help people who are below the poverty line. So if you've claimed benefits, then that's evidence that you've been below the poverty line. That's evidence that you've struggled financially. Now, had this scandal not happened to our family, we would have generational wealth in our community, like other races, like Asians, like Jews, and so forth. We don't because of this scandal. Now, the government offering compensation as an apology to us evidences the fact that they're saying, we hold our hands up. Yes, we have, strangled you financially in relation to housing, in relation to healthcare, denying people access to healthcare because they said you were not British. All this time you were born British. They've refused treatment to people in hospitals because you had a British Caribbean passport. That is absolutely ridiculous. Any of those things you can get evidence from. There's a non-emergency line for the NHS, which is 111, and you would call them to request, can they confirm your family member's NHS number, or can they confirm yours if you're applying for yourself? Do they have evidence that you were, maybe sectioned under the Mental Health Act, or you had an operation that went wrong, or you were mistreated by the hospital? Even if you've claimed compensation for medical negligence in relation to that matter, still put it on the form, because you're evidencing what you've been through on the basis that this nation will tell you you're not British when all this time you were. Contact the Home Office as well. Ask them what evidence they have on you, because the Home Office, they have documents on when you entered the country, who you flew with. Many people that I've met doing these events told me that they flew to this country by themselves at 10 years old, at 20 years old, 12 years old. And when they arrived, they didn't know which one was going to be their mom or auntie, because they haven't seen them for so long. Many people have been through that. That's evidence. But your journey didn't start there. If that relates to you, your journey started at the first moment you realised that you'd been abandoned. Yeah? Now, our grandparents or parents didn't intentionally abandon you. They were manipulated by the British government, who were in control of our islands then, and some of our African nations. There were these great advertisements that looked really positive and, a way to the future. Come to the mother country, England, and you can get better employment, you can have great houses. We know that the houses in the Caribbean are 10 times bigger than the houses here, and you actually own them fully. They manipulated our mothers and grandmothers to believe that they were going to come here, live a better life. It's going to be proper easy for them to send for you, quick time, you can come straight away and live with them. It wasn't like that whatsoever, So we do have to forgive our mothers and grandmothers, or fathers and grandfathers, for, giving us the feeling of abandonment. It was all a form of manipulation. And the UK government knew what they were doing at the time, because there's psychological theories, like attachment, which they now use to diagnose someone with attachment disorder. These theories were written before they'd done this scandal. They knew exactly what they were doing by encouraging parents to leave their children. Yeah? So they knew what they were doing. This has been done to us intentionally. So please, I know it's not easy, but please do consider forgiving your family members for what we've been through. All of us have been exploited through this scandal. If you've ever been detained under the Mental Health Act or in a deportation centre, use that as evidence. Any prison records, use that as evidence as well, because, scientists and sociologists and politicians say that people do crime where there's poverty. People do crime where they're suffering, right? So if you weren't suffering, it's very likely that you wouldn't have done the crime. Remember that they stop people's money, they stop people from earning, they stop people from even having somewhere to live. So of course a lot of people are going to get trapped and feel like crime is the only way out. So if you or your family members do have any of those type records, don't feel too proud to put them in there. We need to put everything in there, everything that we've been through. If you've been in foster care, if you've been adopted, if you've had social services intervention with your own family, you need to be putting it on the application form. I was in foster care for some periods of my childhood when my parents were in and out of prison, and I use that as evidence, and that's what got me my money, basically, because I don't really have much else to put on the form because I'm born here. But that's how I proved that my life and my quality of childhood has been impacted through what my dad's been through, basically. So don't feel too proud to put these records on there. If you've had any issues with housing, you contact the local authority where you've made housing applications. So there's many ways in which you can get this evidence. If you've ever had to use the police for any issues such as racist attacks or whatever, because it was a hostile environment, and still is, but not as bad, but it was a hostile environment when our people arrived in this nation. So after coming here and realising it's a colder climate and there's no home foods, you're now being treated badly by these racists, as well as being told, oh, we don't have nowhere for you to live, sir. You know, so all of these things are what we need to evidence. Use the terminology hostile environment, because that gives background to those that are reading the form to help understand how much this really impacted you. It's multi-layer, so we need to write about everything. And the people who are currently assessing the application forms, they're white middle-class people, probably around my age, from Sheffield, and they're in Sheffield, that's where they are. They don't know much about our community and what you've been through. So if you don't write it on the form, and you only respond to the questions on the form, yes, no, they're not going to fully understand. And there's many people who have been through what we're discussing now, but due to the fact that they just filled out the form, you know, responding to each question, they've been told they're not eligible. So write it in full. Now, what I advise people is to create a chronology, create a timeline, and start from the first moment that you realise that you were involved in this scandal, or that you realise you were suffering. So if you were a child who was left at home alone, start from there. Start from your earliest memory of realising you don't live with your mum or dad, and it's different to other people. If you were someone who come over to the UK in those times, start by the first time you saw the advertisements around, or people were encouraging you to move to the UK. Think about the decisions you were making. Did you have to leave your partner, your children, your siblings, your parents? You know, what was your trail of thought? Where was it influenced by? And then what were the next steps? How did you save up for the money for the flight? Did someone pay? Were you exploited in order to get the money? What happened? When you arrived here, where did you go? Did you get support from the local services? Did you try and get support and they refused? Did you have to kind of do cash in hand jobs like being a nanny, or doing other type of jobs, what you wouldn't really necessarily do if it wasn't for this scandal? Put them all on the form. Remember, don't be too proud. Put everything on there, because, you know, our people need compensating for what we've been through, and the only way you're going to do that is if you are able to evidence and state what you've been through. Now, say, for example, you write 10 points of ways that you've suffered, and you only can evidence 7 of them, and you know you have tried but you can't evidence the other 3, you know, just state that you've tried to get evidence. Tell them what you've done in order to get evidence and what challenges you've faced. We're not going to be able to evidence every single thing, but what you can evidence, please do, because I've, you know, supported people to apply, and they've gone and filled out the form and sent it off, not provided any evidence, and the Home Office have said no. You know, once you start to apply, you can send in evidence, but once they've gave you your final decision, it's very, very tricky to get them to make you an offer now. So it's in everyone's best interest to provide evidence. If you've been in the armed services or whatever, then armed services or any employment, in fact, state it on the application form, because it shows a record that you have been here, and you may have had experiences there due to racism, or being denied employment, or not being promoted and things like that. If you've had issues with not being able to get a travel document, you may not have been able to travel to family functions or family occasions, family funerals, birthdays, weddings. If that's the case, put it all on the form, because it would have affected you and the relationships between you and your loved ones. That all needs to go in there. So, requesting evidence. Many people will think, well, where do I start with the evidence? Okay, I can call these services or contact them, but what do I say? What do I do? Well, what you should do is, when you contact these services, do it by telephone and ask them, please can you confirm where I would send a data subject access request. So a data subject access request, what that means is you are writing to a company and you're requesting legally that they release information on you, and they cannot say no, basically. Any official service in the UK have to, by law, give you this information, but you have to state, I request under the data subject access request information relating to, and be specific. If it was a health issue that you had one time, say that I'm requesting information in relation to my health issues, my leg, my foot, whatever. If you're writing to the Home Office, dear Home Office, please can you confirm any of the processes that I've been through or any challenges that I've had in coming to and from the UK, yeah? Or can you just confirm that I entered the UK in 1960, whatever. Be very specific, otherwise they'll send you a whole file from the day they've known you until now, and that's too much sometimes, it's too overwhelming. If you've been in foster care or been adopted, you can request evidence by law by contacting the social services who placed you in care at the time, or the social services that organised the adoption for you and your families. If you're not sure which one it was, and you're still in touch with your carers, ask them. If you've got any old paperwork or you remember that you have a social worker from such and such local authority, contact the children's services of that local authority, of whichever borough it was in. Contact the children's services, and once you contact them, ask them or ask any service, please can you confirm where I would send a data subject access request. There's a specific place to write to. They either do it by post or by email. It depends. Every organisation has their own process, but it has to be done in writing, and then they should respond to you and acknowledge your request, and then tell you how long it will take to respond to your request. It usually takes 28 days or 30 days. Every organisation has to respond to you by law, yeah, and they don't want legal cases for this, because it comes under the Data Protection Act, so they don't want to get sued or anything, so they will definitely give you it. If you're requesting information for family members, you can use the Freedom of Information Act 2000. You can use the data subject access request, but not all organisations will take that because it's for you and your personal information. So if you're applying for a family member, you may need to use the Freedom of Information Act 2000. As I said, the legislation that's written here can be found on the COCO app, so don't worry if you haven't been able to write it all down. So, the process. So, once you've gathered your, once you've decided which application form you need to apply on, what you should then do is read the application form first, so you have a kind of idea of what they're asking, right? And then write a chronology, remember, from the day that you started suffering, or you realised you started suffering up until the current day. Then what you do, start to collect your evidence. So because it takes 28 to 30 days, call them all as soon as possible. Hi, where do I request information? Send your requests out. On my COCO app, there's a template of a letter of what you can write. You can use the same template and you just change whichever organisation it's to. So you start requesting all of your evidence. You get the correct application form. Now the Home Office, sadly, they ain't going to tell you if, say if you're a primary claimant who come before the 1st of January 1973, but you've used a close family member form because you didn't know the difference, and you write on the close family member form, but you're a primary claimant, do you know the Home Office will tell you that you're not eligible? They won't say, oh, your information looks correct, but I think it's on the wrong form. They just say you're not eligible. How ridiculous is that after you've written your whole life trauma? You know, nobody's ever asked to write down their trauma. when the Jews got the compensation for the Holocaust, they didn't have to write nothing, you know. We're being told we have to evidence what we've been through, and some of us who are writing it down and evidencing it are still being told no. But don't let that deter you. As I said, if you do find yourself in those circumstances, please contact the church and they'll contact me and I'll give you some one-to-one advice. Or if you can download the app, download it. You can message me on there. We have a discussion forum. It's private, just for our Windrush people. And there's many useful presentations on there. And I've got this presentation on there as an e-learning course. So if today you think, oh gosh, what did she say? I've forgotten. There was so much information. Don't worry, you can go back on there, yeah, and it's all free. I don't charge for anything what I do. So once you've downloaded the correct form, please make sure it's a correct form. Go through each of the questions. Some of them won't relate to you. Don't let that throw you off, because some people attend my events and then afterwards they'll say, oh, I looked at the form, it doesn't apply to me. But actually, it's because the first lot of questions are about immigration, deportation, and some of us, we won't have them. But don't let that throw you off. Don't close it and say, I'm not eligible. Keep on going until it does relate to you, because you are going to fit into at least one of those categories. Every single person in our community must fit into at least one of those categories. So go through all of the questions, skip what's not relevant to you, complete what is relevant to you. After each section on the form as well, like housing, employment, blah, 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 there's big boxes as to say, is there anything else that you would like to tell us? That's where you put in anything else that didn't fit into those previous questions. Put everything down there, yeah? Even like memories of just how difficult your relationships might have been or anything. Put it all on there, please. And then how you would evidence that is just like, for example, I was in and out of foster care for sometimes in my childhood. And when I was in foster care, my social worker took me to the GP and they said, because I was eating a lot and sleeping a lot, they said that I've got depression, anxiety. I was like 12 years old. So I didn't take any medication or anything though. I refused it. But yeah, I just used that evidence of anxiety and depression in childhood as evidence, and then evidence that I've been in foster care to show that I've suffered. Now, just that one letter alone from the doctor to say I've got anxiety and depression is what I use to evidence that I've been impacted by not being around my parents or feeling abandoned or whatever. So it's very simple. Like, I don't want you to worry thinking, well, yeah, I had that difficult relationship, but how am I going to show it? That one way or another, you can evidence it. Or even if, for example, you didn't have nothing listed at the GP or on the medicals, but you grew up with your grandma or auntie, that's evidence that you didn't live with your mum, and then you use the attachment disorder theory to show, to explain, and as evidence as to what you've been through psychologically. So there's ways that you can use stuff to evidence what you've been through. Once you've put what evidence you're sending them, read through the application form one last time to make sure you've answered every question as much as possible, in as much detail as possible. You're doing like creative story writing. You need to elaborate and really explain and describe everything you've been through. How did it make you feel? How did it affect your friendships? You know, did it affect your self-love or view of women? Did it put you off having children yourself, being, traumatized from parenting? All of those things need to go in it. Was there domestic violence in the household? Was you a perpetrator? Was you a victim? All of those things, put it in the form, honestly, because that's what's going to get you the money. Once you've done all of that and you've read through all one last time to make sure there's no more last-minute edits, what you then should do is copy it, because if it does get lost, you know, then we can't write those type of things twice. It's way too much for the mind. Now, these application forms for close family members, it's 20 pages long. For our elders, it's 44 pages long, right? It used to be 60-odd pages when they first come out. Now, I don't think it's a mistake that the application form for our elders is 40-plus pages, knowing that many of our elders didn't get the chance to go to education and learn to read and write, you know. But then people born here who's being educated for free, it's 20 pages for us, and most of the questions won't apply to us. you know. So it's very ridiculous, but don't let that put you off. What we done, me and my dad, we done it session by session. So every weekend, maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, we'd do a couple of hours. And when it was too much for him, we'd just stop. But then plan something nice afterwards, like a nice relaxing bath or nice food, or you go to the cinema or something so you can take your mind off it. Because recalling trauma, it further traumatizes us. It's ridiculous the way that they're making us fill out this form. But what I can say is myself and other community activists, legal representatives like Martin Ford, who is a KC, was a QC, but is now the King's Chambers. Martin Ford is a KC. His parents are Bayesian. They come here in the Windrush era. He was the one who introduced this idea to the Home Office and made them realise that they've breached their own legislation. He's gave them a set of questions because he was asking us basically, he'd done some research and was asking certain members of the community if what type of questions they think that they should ask us and stuff. He'd done a whole kind of a lot of research, and then he gave it to the Home Office, and they've missed a lot of things out. So he's not happy with how this is being done. The legal teams are not happy with how long it's been taken and how much we're getting awarded. So what myself, the legal representatives, and some politicians as well from the Labour Party, like Diane Abbott, Carlton Young as well from Croydon, they're starting to encourage the wider Labour Party to get this discussed in Parliament so they can give us a higher offer. So if we are successful, you know, whether you're successful or not anyway, keep on looking out, because maybe this time next year you're going to see on the news that they're actually being legally challenged to pay us more. Yeah, so there are people in the background now working on to improve this experience for us. So hopefully we'll get even more money as well. But anyway, once you've done all of that and you've copied all the form and stuff, you can send it off by post or by email. It's free. The details are there. All of the details are on. All of the details are on the government website as well, and they're also on the application forms. They're on the application forms and on my application as well. So on the CoCo app, there's all the links there to the different application forms and other useful links as to what to use for your application. Now you can email them to request evidence about your legal status. So some of you may have indefinite leave to remain, some of you may have your British status, some of you still may be Jamaican citizens. If you are, then you can apply to get a document to prove what your legal status is now. Believe it or not, my dad still doesn't have his British passport, even though he's been in the army here. He's been here longer than I've been alive. He's been compensated and he still doesn't have his British passport. So we've currently got a complaint open with the Passport Office, but what they've advised us to do is to get this legal document. I didn't know that at the time we applied for his compensation, but now I know it. We are going through the process of getting evidence of his legal status here. You can then use that to make a British passport application if you don't have one already. So, another thing as well, if our family members who got left abroad want to come to the UK or get a document to come to the UK, they may be able to if their parents were British. If their parents are alive and British, that's good. They'll probably be able to get a document to come to the UK. Or if their parents were British or naturalised at the time that they passed, our family members who got left back home may be able to get a document to come to the UK. So that's something to look into. If that sounds interesting to you, just speak to me afterwards or message me on the CoCo app, and I will explain to you how to do that. On the CoCo app, I've also got a presentation for our family members who are abroad for them to apply. So how to apply for this scheme and for your legal status document from abroad. That also applies to people who may have come here before the 1st of January 1973, but then moved to Canada or America or whatever. So long as you come before 1973, it doesn't matter where you live now, you are eligible. Yeah? So what happens next? What happens next once you send your application form off? with all of the documents, what happens next? So what happens next is you'll be contacted to confirm that your claim has been received. The Home Office will send you a letter. They send you these letters like on beige paper. They will give you a reference number. Keep evidence of these letters. Every time you try and track your application, you have to use your reference number. So keep that reference number handy. What I've done is I save my reference number in my mobile phone, because they'll ring you at any time and you've got to tell them what your reference number is. Of course, you're not going to have that letter on you all of the time. So I just saved it in my phone book in my phone under Windrush reference number. So they'll give you a reference number. They may ask for clarity on certain matters because it wasn't clear in your application. Or they may say, you've noted blah, blah, blah. Where's the evidence? So you're still able to submit that evidence. But if you do all that beforehand, it will prevent prolonging it. If you send a full application with all of your evidence, do you know that they can make an offer to you to pay you within 6 weeks of receiving your application? Well, 6 weeks of acknowledging your application. You can get what's called a preliminary payment. A preliminary payment just means that they know that you're eligible, they've sought evidence, they'll give you £10,000 now, and they will give you the rest towards the end of your application. So if they do write to you saying, oh, we're going to give you a £10,000 preliminary offer, don't think that's all they're giving you. They're giving you 10 grand now, and the rest by the time they finished assessing your application. Okay. Some people I know said, oh yeah, I've got 10 grand, and then later they're like, they gave me more. So that's really, really happening within 6 weeks, you know. But if they get your application, they may assess it and say, we're assessing it, you don't qualify for the preliminary payment. Don't worry, you'll still get a full offer. They just don't think there's any need for you to get it right now, the preliminary payment. If you or your family members are suffering from a terminal illness, but you're applying now, let them know, because they can give you the money straight away, the full amount. They will fast track your case. So if anyone is in those circumstances, let them know. Once they've assessed all of your information, they will give you a final offer. As I said, whatever your final offer is, decline it and advise them that you expect more and explain why. All you've got to do is just re-explain what you've already explained in short and just say, I've been through way too much. 25 grand is not worth it. Sorry, you know, the way that it's impacted me, my children, their children, and so forth. No, that's not enough. Let them know. And then, but if you do say yes to your offer, it's going to be in your account within 3 to 6 weeks. When they sent me my offer, I signed it straight away and scanned it over to them. And then the next day I was like, hi, did you receive my email? And literally about 3 weeks after, the money was in my whole account. If you're applying from abroad, they can pay you into your international bank account, so don't worry about that, anybody. Yes, if you're not successful, then you can request a review, submit additional information to tell them why you don't agree with their decision. So that's the application process, basically. And if you're unhappy, yes, you can appeal. If you are going to appeal, message me on the CoCo app or let someone know in the church, and I will have a one-to-one with you before you do that. And if I think you need legal advice or support, I will try and help you the best I can to get that as well. So, we're almost at the end of the presentation now, and this is the most important part. This is what people need to listen to keenly, because most of the other stuff I've said is on the application forms. But the cycle of intergenerational trauma. So the cycle of intergenerational trauma, this explains how our children or grandchildren will have been affected by the scandal, even if they were born here. So our grandparents or parents come to England whilst leaving remaining children in our home nations. That affected our parents and grandparents as well, you know, separating from your children. Those decisions are not easy. But you think you've done it for the best. Even my cousins that live in Jamaica now, if I say to them, what's your dreams? It's to come to England or America or Canada. So imagine 50, 75 years ago, of course, that's what their dream is. So they left the children at home. The children who were left at home grew up without their mother, without their immediate family, and that caused psychological issues. such as attachment disorder and maternal deprivation. You need to write that on your form. Growing up with those psychological issues, feeling abandoned, feeling different from your friends, not knowing what your mum or dad look like anymore, not knowing if you even look like them or if they think about you or how much do they think about you. All this time they probably were sending money back home for you that didn't always get spent on you. Yeah? So there's all of these issues happening to the child that's growing up abandoned, happening to the parent that's here, feeling guilty and shameful that they left their children and now they're having issues sending for them. The children who were left at home either never made it here and is deeply psychologically affected, or finally made it here, and when they made it here, they realised that mum or dad has had other children. So you've gone from feeling abandoned to arriving here thinking, what? You replaced me. You had brothers and sisters and didn't even tell me. Like, I'm 17 and I'm just meeting my 11-year-old brother or sister. So there's all of those feelings. Then, in my family, for example, my aunties and uncles tell me how the Jamaican ones would argue with the British ones and say, oh, you're too British, man, you're like a white man or a white woman. And then the other ones would say, why do you talk like that? Talk properly. So there was those disputes happening in the family home. And of course, those who just come to the UK are going to feel a certain way towards their parents, knowing that all this time you were here parenting someone, not me. So, that caused friction between siblings and the family in the home, causing further dysfunction and further broken relationships in the family. And that's causing further psychological issues and mental health issues as well. If psychological issues are left and they're not met, or you're not supported through them, then they can turn into psychological issues, mental health issues. Loneliness, if not attended to, can become a mental health issue. And some people who were left back at home or grew up without their parents experienced other forms of abuse as well. These are the type of things you need to be putting on the form. Sorry if that brings up any negative memories, but you have to put it on the form. It's going to get you more money. Now, these are the type of things that our family members have been through. Those children have now grown into adults, don't have much support from the family. They go on to have children themselves, and they're not really sure how to parent because they weren't taught. And they thought, when I have a kid, I'm going to love it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But when they actually have the child and their psychological issues come through onto their parenting, and now they're acting like their parents and can't show their child love or nurturing properly, and they don't even realise it. These are the type of things that you need to be noting down, but this is how intergenerational trauma has affected us. Now these children that are growing up by these traumatised adults are being parented by a traumatised parent, and their experience of childhood is different and traumatic as well. They're growing up thinking, why does my dad or mum never say, oh, I love you? Why when I go to hug my mum, is she flinching when it's my mum, Why when I say I love you, do they never say I love you back? Well, my mum must not love me then. My dad must not love me then. Well, I'm not a lovable person. And people who internalise that can grow to self-hating. These psychological issues as well, many of our community self-medicated, and in the 60s there was the crack epidemic in our community. Many people had to deal with their issues themselves and self-medicate, misusing substances, which had a further impact on their mental health and broken down relationships in the family. This is how it kind of goes on like a domino effect throughout our family. Now, the children of today growing up with parents who are crack addicts, can't parent them and further abandon them and leave them. And now the third generation is growing up with these same abandonment issues and childhood trauma issues. This is how intergenerational trauma affects our family. Yeah. So at one point, my dad was in prison. My elder brother was in prison, the one who was born in Berlin and also facing deportation. And then his teenage son, who's now 25 and still in prison, was all in prison at the same time. Now, some people might think, oh, look at your family. Or they may think, oh, gosh, how embarrassing. But actually, it's all due to intergenerational trauma. If we didn't go through the Windrush scandal, trust me, a lot of things would not be happening in our community. Even with the females in our community, some females have been sex workers or still are. It's very likely to be due to some of these experiences, either in early childhood or coming here, not being able to work because you weren't classed as British, and then thinking, well, I need to pay for my naturalisation, I need to pay for my housing, you know? So there's been a lot of things that our people have been through, and we may not even associate it with this scandal, but even the crackheads that are out there today, they're likely to come from our lineage as well. So with all of that said, that's how intergenerational trauma affects us and affects the children of today. And then those children that have grown up to be teenagers now and don't have respect for people and want to carry out youth violence and are quick to kill somebody else that looks like them, it's because all that time the culture and everything is being drowned out, and they're drowned by Eurocentrism and Eurocentrism and the Eurocentric views of beauty and who you should be, and the forced assimilation, you know, you're British. We've got young people with 2 Caribbean parents calling someone an effing yardie, not realising that you're talking about yourself. It's because of what they've been through. It's the trauma. So, you know, that's how it affects our children today. And then, of course, in society, there's institutional racism. There's racism from the police. There's racism in education. There's the school-to-prison pipeline. All of these other agendas, stop and search, directly links into all of this. The exploitation through music. A lot of the music in the UK today comes from us, from the Windrush generations. You know, and that's another area where we are exploited. So yeah, with maternal deprivation and attachment disorder, they are official disorders that are known and accepted from medical professionals in the UK. Now, although you may not have been diagnosed with it and it might not be on your record, some of us will have it, not all of us do, you can still use it as a way to explain and evidence your thoughts and feelings from being separated from family. And it is written here, but you can find it on the Coco app. And you can also look it up online on Simply Psychology. So when I used to be at uni and I used to study this, I used to use Simply Psychology because all the other stuff was written in such complex language, I didn't even understand it. But I found this site, simplypsychology.com. That's written in normal layman's terms. It explains things, it breaks it down easily for you to understand. But as I said earlier, maternal deprivation is based on the psychological issues of you processing what's happened between you and your mum, the separation. Not only do you feel lonely and abandoned, you know, it affects our development. So when a baby and its mother has a close bond, you're helping your baby's brain develop its neurology, the way its brain works, the way you love yourself, your emotions, your mental health, your trust, absolutely everything is developed from that first bond. If that first bond has been broken, especially within the first 6 years of your life, you can have developmental delays. And you know, these days they say you've got ADHD, you've got dyslexia, you've got autism or whatever. I honestly think that is highly influenced by actually the broken bond between the mother and its child. And there's scientific evidence for that as well. And attachment is based on you and your mum, but it's also based on your sibling group or whoever. So that is the end of my presentation, and we are going to open up for some questions. But I just want to ask everyone, how are you feeling? Do you want to go to the toilet or a quick break before we go into questions? Questions? All right, cool. So there's the Coco app displayed up on the board. I'm just going to have a sip of water and then I'll take some questions, yeah? Yes. So, thank you. Can you... Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining on the Zoom as well, everyone. Thank you for joining this meeting. We're just handing some cards out for everyone so that they can join the Coco app, like yourselves as well. I hope, I'm just talking to the people on Zoom, by the way. I hope that you found the presentation useful. It's the same presentation that I've recently added in the Coco app. It's very similar to the one that's the e-learning course, but we've added some additional information on maternal deprivation and attachment disorder. For those that are on the Coco app, please do look at the discussion feed, the forum, in the Windrush Compensation Scheme group, because I've added some recent applications like how to apply from abroad, how to legally request information, and important things to consider when writing out your application form. So there's lots of tips on there, like things that you can put on the form to make a claim. So for the people on Zoom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask questions for people in the room. I'll try and answer questions here, but if I don't get to answer your question on the Zoom, just message me on the app or put it in the forum there, okay, because I'll be able to respond there. But the Q&A really is more so for the people in here, because they're not yet on the app and this is their only opportunity to ask me those questions. If you do hear it go mute now, don't panic. It's solely because we're recording Zoom, but not everyone wants their personal stuff on record. So, yeah. If you have a question in here, please just put your hand up and then we'll come around with a microphone to ask you questions. But I want everyone to have an opportunity to ask me questions. And if there's anything that's a little bit personal, you can come to me one-to-one as opposed to asking me in front of everyone if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And if you don't want your question to be recorded, let me know so I can mute this. These recordings, they're only controlled by me. They will only be shared on the Coco app, which is a private group, and I will be adding them to a documentary. I'm currently making a documentary on the Windrush scandal from the beginning, from the adverts and our family discussions of who's coming to the UK, and then when you arrive, what it's actually like, you know, and how does it affect us to this current day. One of the reasons why I'm doing that is because it hasn't been done before. People show little certain experiences of the scandal, but I'm also doing it for people my age and younger than me who don't always know why are we here, how are black people in the UK, what did my parents go through, and, you know, what have the government done to us, and what is true culture, because there's a lot of negative stereotypes of what a black woman is or what a black man is that aren't the true representation of the black man and black woman. So, you know, I'm kind of using that as a way to put it all together and show young people where they come from, really. Yes, so does anybody have any questions, please? We've got a question here. Yes, he's just going to come with a mic if that's all right, yeah? Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to ask if I can take this on myself to complete the form.
Yeah.
I fear that I may not put down everything that I should in terms of documentation. What sort of legal fees are we talking, roughly? How much would it cost if I wanted to get someone else to do it for me?
If you wanted to get someone to complete the form for you? The thing is if you are able to read and write, I really encourage people to do it themselves. The reason being is, if you don't, you're still going to have to sit there and explain all of what you've been through to someone else, and that means that person is going to know everything about you. Now, I encourage everyone who's got reading and writing skills to do it themselves. It's not that complex, you know. I was helping my dad and my older brother do theirs, and then I written my own as well, all within the space of a year. And, you know, I can read and write. It did take us a little while. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's definitely achievable. Now, there are people out there, services out there, who may be supporting people to complete the form. Everyone charges different things. Now, I don't charge for any of my services, but I don't complete the form. We do support people to complete it, but how I do that is I give them this information, and then me and my dad may speak to them and say, yeah, fill out this, or all right, this is what you do for that question. And we can guide you through it, through the app as well. We can guide you through it, because you can just message me and say, oh, this is where I'm up to, what do I do next? We can really guide you through it. Unless you've got a really complex legal issue, I would encourage you to do it yourself. The reason being is there's not much support for this. and there's 3 million of us here. So, you know, I would really like those who really need the support to do it. But I'm assuming you're related to each other. Yeah? You come together. So with yourselves, what I would say is sit together and discuss it, because some of you may have different memories of what mum or dad went through, and you know different stuff about your parents, and you may remember things that she may not remember of when you arrived. Sit together. A lot of your information will be very similar, and then you just add your own parts on. Do you know what I mean? So you would meet up every Friday, for example, for a few hours. You do an hour and a half on the form, and then you have dinner for an hour or something like that. And if you've done that for about 6 weeks, once a week, you would complete the form. Yeah? Honestly, you would, because not every question relates to you. And I don't want you to feel put off. But, you know, if there's a legal reason or whatever, or you're not able to read and write for whatever reason, then that's where I would encourage you to get support. Okay. Yeah?
No, I can read and write.
Yes.
I'll have a go. I'll definitely have a go. It's just that I came here when I was 6 years old.
Yes.
I'm in my mid-60s now.
Yes.
So I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff to kind of bring back to memory. And,
Yes.
you know, I just thought I don't know if I'd be able to do it by myself. But like you said, maybe with the help of my siblings, possibly.
Yeah, so what I would say is, first and foremost, start off with your chronology. You could start writing your chronology this weekend. It's just about you. How old was I when mum and dad left? Were my sisters born then? Did we all live together? Then what, you know? And you just go down year by year. Or, you know, well, in 1971, in 1975, by the time it was 1978, I'd arrived here. By 1982, we lived with mum and dad in our mortgaged house or whatever. You know, we went to school in such and such date, what you can remember. And then, of course, the things you've been through. Now, you don't have to rack your brains of every single thing that happened to you and how it happened. Just remember, oh yeah, this happened when mum and dad broke up. You know what I mean? That happened in 1985. And do it stage by stage. I know it can feel like so much thinking about writing it all down at once. Don't write it down at once. Start with your chronology this weekend, for example. Next weekend, print off the forms and start to look at them and decide what evidence you're going to request from which service. The following weekend, start to request the evidence from those services, you see, because when you do it step by step, it makes it so much more easier and less stressful to think of. That's fine. Take your time.
Can I just say that there are a lot of people out there, black community, that believe that the compensation is only for people that have been deported.
Yeah.
And they're not coming forward.
I understand that, and that's also one of the reasons why I promote it.
Yeah.
This is why I promote it. First and foremost, what you should do is what we done. We applied ourselves first. Before I told anyone about it, I said, let me apply. I'm the type of person who does the science research on myself first before I tell people what the findings are. So we supported each other to apply. Once we applied and realised it's real, I said, I have to tell people. You know, the only way people are going to believe you is if you led by example and done it yourself first. But what you can also do is advise them to go onto the government website and check themselves. The government website itself it specifically says that you do not have to have been deported in order to apply. It states clearly what the criteria is. It's if you arrived before the 1st of January 1973 and if you can evidence that you've suffered in one way or another. You know, and that's financially or non-financially. And every single one of us have had at least the maternal deprivation and attachment disorder from being abandoned or having broken families. And every single one of us would have had issues with housing. It's a must because of the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish rules. So them two things alone, and naturalisation or sending for family, everyone's had those issues, you know. So that's all they would have to note. And then if you've had other stuff on top, abuse, adoption, fostering, whatever, that's what you get evidence for. If they don't want to believe you, just say, look on the government website. The government ain't going to lie themselves, you know.
Yeah. I'm not sure where we're getting this information from, but even I thought so initially, until a friend of mine happened to say to me last week, no, you must apply. My dad applied and he got it. My sister applied and she
Yeah.
got it. You must try. And I
Yes.
said, yeah, but I don't have any evidence. She said to me, look, you're going to have to kind of just elaborate on everything that's happened, try and
Yeah.
remember what's happened and put it down.
Yes.
And then this morning, a friend of mine, because I happened to say to someone, do you know of anyone that I can speak to? And she texted me with this information for today.
Oh,
And
great.
I texted my two sisters and said, look, there's a talk. Would you
Yeah.
like to come? And they've said yes. So I'm so pleased I'm here today. I can't tell you, honestly.
Oh, thank you so much for attending, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing. But there's a way to evidence it. Honestly, I only use evidence of foster care, evidence of anxiety and depression, and evidence that I got in trouble with the police when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Those three evidences and evidence that he's my father, I promise you, that is the only thing I put on the form. And yeah, he was in a deportation centre. That's probably why I got so much as a British-born mixed-race person. But I'm just showing you those. It can be as scanty as that, the evidence. So for yourselves, evidence of when you arrived, evidence that you didn't grow up with your family members, if that was the case, and then any evidence of GP medical history, even if you just got anxiety, depression or stress or whatever, and then anything else you can think of where you've requested support or where you've applied for housing and didn't get it. Those four things, or any issues with being accepted as a home student in the UK, those four things alone is evidence of what you're going to say, basically. Yeah, so people think, well, how can I get evidence? I can't evidence all of the stuff I put on my form, but those four pieces put together a picture in the assessor's mind who's assessing your claim. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, sis. Thank you. Oh, thank you for your patience with your question as well.
No problems. Fantastic presentation. So you said about, both my parents are still alive. They came before 19 whatever, and that they would have experienced, obviously, the blacks, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
the housing issues.
Yes.
They obviously you can't provide information, proof regarding that evidence.
You can.
How?
So when they arrived here, what council did they apply to? Say, for example, they arrived here, right, on the basis that they were promised. They thought they were coming to this beautiful mother country, blah, blah, blah. And then you evidence it by, number one, showing that it was a hostile environment.
Yeah.
You evidence it using mainstream, newspaper articles of the no dogs, no black, no Irish rule. Then you use evidence that they are British Caribbeans. And then you use evidence that when they arrived here, they applied to Brent Council or wherever it was.
Yeah.
You call Brent Council and you request, where do I send a data subject access request? We'll give you an address. Make sure you follow their advice. We'll tell you where to write it to. You write, I request under data subject access request, evidence of any housing applications or support for accommodation on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. and your mum and dad's surname. Right? Put their date of birth and their national insurance number.
Yeah.
They have to provide any evidence of any housing applications. When my dad applied for his compensation, they found evidence that my grandma claimed for child benefit for my dad when he was 17 years old. He's 67, that was 50 years ago. They found that evidence in 2018.
Okay. And also, I think my parents had to apply for naturalization as well,
Yes.
so they get more money for that as well, I guess. Right?
Yes.
But obviously they'd have proof for that, yeah?
So basically, how they would provide proof for that is, number one, they will have a naturalisation certificate.
Right.
If they can't find the certificate, you can contact the Home Office and request another certificate, or request under the data subject access request to the Home Office of when your parents arrived and when they applied for naturalisation. If they're now British, ask for what year that was. Use that evidence to then say, this is what my family have had to go through. Then, although your parents may not have the receipts from way back when, you can go onto the government website or request evidence from the Home Office itself. How much did you charge for naturalisation for Jamaican citizens or whatever island your parents are from in the year they naturalised? The year they naturalised will be on the certificate.
Okay, and just two last questions. Once my parents claimed to be successful, and then I wanted to claim for, say, stuff that I've been through with the police, would the fact that they've got stuff, successfully
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So let me just answer that though, just for people who are listening. I know that you get, but people listening. So basically, those of us that are born here, we're only eligible through my parents, so we don't have to evidence immigration and stuff. We're evidencing how our lives have been mashed up due to what they've been through. So the answer to that question is yes. All you have to prove is areas where you suffered, prison or whatever, health, whatever, and you say this is due to being parented by parents who were traumatized. Yeah?
And so last question. How many people have applied for this, and how many people are successful? You don't know.
I don't really know because I don't know how many people have applied for it because all I do is give people information. I don't work for the Home Office. The Home Office don't like me.
Sorry, sir, just before you go. What that lady said is true. There's this about the fact that a lot of black people think that you can only get money if you've been deported or immigration problems. This is something that there's this pastor who's been with another church who's working in the Home Office who's basically telling people you can only get it.
Yeah, he made a video about me on YouTube saying that my information is incorrect. Pastor Alton Bell.
That's it. Yeah,
Pastor Alton Bell, right?
Yeah,
Let me just say this, right? I don't usually bring this up.
He's really spreading that a lot.
You see, Pastor Alton Bell, can you believe this man is supposed to be a Windrush ambassador? A Windrush ambassador, their role is to go out to the community and encourage people to apply and tell them what the criteria is. Why does this man have an 11-minute video on YouTube telling people how my information is not correct, don't come to my events? But he doesn't have not even a 1-minute video of encouraging people how to apply and informing us about the scheme. This guy has been...
He's taken a backhander or something.
Yes.
500 grand or something.
This guy has been a Home Office Windrush ambassador for 4+ years, and not once has he held an event. Do you know that when I started doing these events, the Home Office tried to fight me? They sent their agents like him, Mr. Alton Bell, and he even says on a YouTube video, you know, I'm a Home Office ambassador, I have been for 4 years. Can you believe that it's a voluntary role? He's not even getting paid to discourage our community from applying. And the thing is when you take roles for self to be kind of like for your own self, you know, to say, oh, I'm a Home Office ambassador, you're not going to look at all of the rules and regulations or what it is to apply. Yeah, so please do not allow people like him to discourage you. Another thing they've done to me, because I do Zoom meetings sometimes for people who can't get out, like the elderly or sick, to do the same presentation. They sent the same agents, a Home Office ambassador, on my Zoom meeting to tell people my information was incorrect, but I saw what she said. I brought her onto the Zoom. I've posted the video in the Coco app so you can see it, and I've asked the person who's hosting the show to bring her on so I can question her. I said, please can you tell me what part of my information is incorrect? And then she started to say, oh, it's 80% correct. I said, no, let's focus on the 20% that you're trying to say is not correct. I asked her to tell everyone what the correct information is, and she couldn't tell anyone anything. She had to apologize and come off, and, you know, she embarrassed herself because we had almost 900 people watching. And I said to her, whoever sent you, go back to them and tell them that you failed in your mission, and tell them that you're going to need some tougher agents because you haven't achieved anything here. So please don't be discouraged by them. Just tell people to look on the government website or call the Windrush line yourselves, right, even though they're not that helpful. But the government website itself say you don't have to have had to be deported to go through that. My name's Katie Wilson-Downie. Yeah, Katie Wilson-Downie. And, yeah, he made a whole video, he's made a few videos about us, but you know, they've been sent, their agents, so do apply. The thing is what I would say to everyone, and what I say that you should say to people is, do apply and let the Home Office tell you you're not eligible. Don't assume yourself, and don't let people like him who's never made an application. He's probably eligible and doesn't even realise, you know, because because he's like a similar age to my dad. He must be eligible, but he doesn't realise because he hasn't read, the guidance.
1 second. This gentleman asked one question about how much people had applied. 2 Saturdays ago on BBC Parliament, the very same issue that Katie and I have been going to the House of Parliament and asking the politicians to bring this to question. They did ask the Secretary of State that question. 3,700 West Indian people has applied out of 3 million. Because we try to get, where's the 500 million gone? 3,500, 250 Nigerian, 125 Ghanaian, 20,000 South African, hello, has got benefit. They wouldn't tell us how much thousand Canadian received. They says, oh, I'll have to come back to you on that. They are paying out the white people more than they're paying out the black people. And that is why this lady would have said, I told you had to be deported or trying to be deported by the Home Office, because that's what they started and tried to tell everybody first until Katie started, but Dad, you don't know. I said, no, you don't have to be deported or try to be deported. Just the fact that they have to ask you to naturalize. That is your immigration issue right there. How much of you came here with a Jamaican, British, colonial Jamaican passport? You're a British subject. You're born property of the Crown of England. Yes? That make you what? Citizens of Britain. And then they tell you come to England, street paved with gold. You come here, expect gold off the ground. Uh-oh, can't even get a job. You can't get a job. You can't get asked, because you're not a dog. You're not Irish. You're a nigger or black man, excuse my French. You can't get asked in. Come on. Fill out the application form and let them give you your money. And I've got a big chip in my shoulder against them. Not only did they do it to me, they done it to my son. Do you understand? And we give it for free. We don't charge nobody. And I wouldn't pay nobody to fill out my form. Why should they benefit out of the sufferation of your bloodline? Think about it, Mom. Please. Yes, I want. Go on the cocoa hat.
No, there's no cut-off date. But Suella Braverman, Pretty Patel number 2, Ugly Patel, she's trying to encourage the Home Office to put on a deadline. They are so vexed because they thought that this scheme was going to be introduced. They're not going to do no radio advertising or news advertising or even in the media. They're going to have people like Pastor Alton Bell and his cronies saying, don't apply, it's not for you, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, and they're going to keep all of that money for themselves. He even had the cheek to go around saying, don't listen to me, don't attend my events, you're all going to block the system if you all apply at once. Do we care about a system that's never cared about us? The Home Office need to employ more staff if there's too many applications. It's not a concern for us. And people who deliver that type of message, you already know whose side they're on. They're not on our side, because they would be giving you the same message that I'm giving you. Anyway, with all of that said, there's no cut-off date. They do want to apply for one, but as I said, there's me, there's Jacqueline McKenzie, there's Martin Ford, and there's Diane Abbott, and all of them currently in the House of Parliament lobbying to try and get to prevent any type of deadline and get people more money. Yeah, but with that said, we don't know which way it's going to go, so I would encourage as many people to apply as soon as possible, because anyhow, they cut that deadline off and people haven't applied, it might be too late. But as I said, even if there is a deadline, those who have applied, whether successful or not, we're fighting the Home Office to get more money and to get more compensation. So even if you put an application in and they close it, we're going to be fighting for everyone who made an application to get more money as well. Yes.
So I can apply as a primary carer, as a child left behind.
Yes.
My mum died with no, she didn't have a will.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Would that, I mean, I couldn't apply for myself and her.
You can. You can apply for yourself as a primary claimant, and as your mum, and is your mum still alive?
No, she died.
Representative of an estate application for your mum, primary claimant for you, and then if your children can evidence that they've suffered due to the scandal, close family member form for them as well. And as my dad said, even though on the form it doesn't say grandchildren, on the old form it originally did, but even though it doesn't, you can put it on there. So when I said earlier, my dad, my brother, and my brother's son was in prison at once, my nephew, when he gets out of prison, I'm going to be supporting him to apply, because he's been traumatized due to what his dad and granddad have been through, and he's also got family members on his mum's side as well that have been through the scandal. So, you know, so you can apply so long as you can evidence that you've suffered. That's all. Okay. Yeah. You're welcome, sis. Representative of an estate for deceased application. Yeah.
So you're going around and giving this information for free. I've seen you in Nottingham, seen you in Birmingham, all over. So how can we, as the people who find this information extremely valuable, and a lot of people, as been said today, wouldn't even have known and thought it was just for people who've been deported, how can we support financially so that you can reach more people and get the information out? I think that's very important still.
Well, the thing is I don't want the community to feel like it's a money thing, you know. I'm not going to do this and then say, right, everyone, leave a donation before you go, otherwise you're not getting out the building. If people want to donate, they can, but honestly, it's the least of my worries. How people would donate, you can request my details through the Coco app. You can donate to the church. They can let me know. Yeah, I'm not really encouraging donations, honestly, I'm not. So how people can donate is by filling out the form themselves and encouraging other people to complete the forms and guiding people and showing them the Coco app. That's what people can really do, and that's all I want people to do. Apply and share what they've learned here today. That's all what I ask for. If people really want to give a cash donation, they can, but I'm kind of confident that the Most High will compensate me, you know. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Is there any more questions? So, as I said, please do. Once you go onto the Coco app, I almost forgot to say this. But once you go onto the Coco app, there's a Windrush Comp Scheme group. So, once you download the app and make a little profile, you don't have to put a picture or your own names on there if you don't want to. Don't worry about that. But just look for the Windrush Comp Scheme group and just join that, make a request, and then I'll accept you. And I've also, so basically, I applied for my Jamaican passport last year through descent. So if your parent or grandparents born in the Caribbean or any nation, in fact, you can apply for a passport through descent, through your lineage. So I've made another group on the Coco app called the JA Passport Group, where you can learn how to apply for your first passport if you're born here, or how to renew your passport if you were born there, and how to even get your birth certificate online. So I got my dad's birth certificate last year. We bought 2 copies online, and we renewed his passport, and I got my passport as well. And I think it's very important in regards to where economics is going now and in the next 70 years. In 77 years' time, in the year 2100, mainstream scientists and sociologists predict that Africa will be the only world superpower. European superpowers, like countries, America, that will go down, and even China and Russia, they will no longer be a world power. In 77 years, the year 2100, only Africa will be the world's superpower, and the majority of the world's populations are going to be in Africa. Oriental people are going to be extinct, and so Caucasians as well. That's in 77 years. With all of that said, I encourage everyone, if you do get this money, to start investing in Africa and the Caribbean, because that's where all life is going to be. In 77 years' time, we're going to start to see the world transform into Zion. That's what's going to be happening, and that's real. And even mainstream scientists who don't believe in God acknowledge that, and they're putting that information out now. So yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. But I want to ask you a quick question.
Yes.
For instance, in 1979, I was bitten by the police, unconscious, almost died, spent months in a coma, right? Because of racism, National Front, right?
Racism?
No, I was bitten by the police in Soho. I had a fractured skull, blood out my brain, unconscious for months, right? Bled Lepage got killed on the same day. You might have heard of Lepage, right? Could I claim on those bases?
Yes, you can. Start with first and foremost proving that you come here. Start first and foremost by explaining that you come to the UK before 73 or your parents did. 65, yes. So state that you come here and the circumstances, and then in terms of your timeline, state what you've been through. That would come under impact of life. And call 101. So the non-emergency police line. By the way, I've got on the COCO app, I've got a list of contact details for different services, but you call 101, the non-emergency police line, and you give them your details and you request, ask them, where would you send a request in writing for custody record?
There are lots of newspaper reports and things like that.
Oh, you have evidence? Exactly. So from you can evidence that, you put that on there.
Newspaper reports and many different
exactly.
things. Yeah?
National Front, yeah. And you use that evidence and then also use the terms like hostile environment and things like that to evidence what you've been through, then the incident, and then the psychological effect after coming out of a coma and the rehab you had to go through and any followed on medication or medical things that you had to go through, yeah? If you had to go through rehab and those things, loss of earnings, all of those, and the effects on your family relationships and stuff as well, you know? Put all of that on there. It's absolutely ridiculous what people have been through. But as well, if you're applying on behalf of deceased family members, you see if the circumstances of death were suspicious, because black women are 5 times more likely to die in child labour than white women in the UK. All of those things, put it on the form because it clearly adds to it. And many people, they've suffered medical negligence. You know, they've died in hospital due to being given medication that they're that they're allergic to. That's happened to many of our community by accident. Put all of that on the form and any evidence, please. Yes.
Just want to thank you once again.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, so we have an event tomorrow in Croydon. We don't usually do 2 events in 2 days. But what I can say, it's in another Seventh-day Adventist church tomorrow in Croydon. It's a Seventh-day Adventist church on Derby Road, Croydon. Do you know, I must give thanks to the Seventh-day Adventist church in general, because it's been the Seventh-day Adventist church in Northampton, Croydon, and here that have given me their buildings for free. You know, and even made donations and stuff, and just been really kind to us, really. And that was at the time that Pastor Alton Bell was circulating those videos online, and they even, someone from Alton Bell's crew contacted the church and told them not to host us, and they still hosted us. So I give thanks for that. And please do spread the word that you've been to the event. You can look on the government website to see what my presentation stated on the government website, and you can tell those people, or feel free to tell those people that whatever that man's saying, that's definitely not true, you know. So, yeah. Thank you all. Thank you. Oh, yes. So, the event in Croydon tomorrow is 12 p.m. till 6 p.m. We have these events around every 2 weeks. After tomorrow, our next event is on the 6th of May in Balham. 6th of May, the Unity Centre on Ravenstone Road. Number 2 to 4, Ravenstone Road, Balham, SW12. That's on the 6th of May from 12 till 6 p.m. And we've also, if you look on the COCO app, all of my flyers are on there. We've got an event in Tottenham in June, and I'm currently organising a date for my Hackney event. So you know, and if you know anyone with any community buildings that are willing to give us it for at least 2 hours, we will go to any place to go and deliver these sessions for our community. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you. Yes?
Ladies and gentlemen, as you see these cards, the www.coca.co.uk actually wasn't printed on this card. So please, if you need to get on the COCO app, get this down, www.coca. Yeah. So you need 3 W's. Yes, COCO, C-O-C, yeah,